Hello everyone. Warm welcome to CRED once again. So really excited to see this the Kong community in Bangalore really growing, right? And thanks to Avinash and his team again to taking this initiative and organizing these meetups, right? Today I'll be talking about how do you do your local setup to sort of test and develop multiple Kong plugins, right? And I'll be sharing my experiences and learnings in this aspect, right? But before I start, just a quick show of hands, right? So how many of you have some experience with Kong or have actually used Kong before? Okay, okay. And how many of you have actually developed plugins in Kong? Okay, okay, nice, good to see. All right. Okay, so before I start, a brief introduction about myself, right? So I'm Abhishek, and I've been with CRED for around 1.5 years now. And right now, my focus areas include building checkout, ordering, payments, pricing, and promotions related capabilities, right? And providing them as platform to different line of businesses which we have, right? So as Jess mentioned about, right? So we have these different line of businesses like cash, mint, store, travel, etc. Right? And all of them sort of need order lifecycle management, right? Starting from adding to cart, doing checkout, calculating the price, collecting payments, doing payouts in certain cases, for example, utility bill payments or credit card bill payments, right? Applying offers, promotions wherever possible, right? So we provide this as a common capability to different teams that we have. So before this, I worked with companies like Razorpay and Flipkart, building tech platforms and cloud platform services, right? And in this journey, I have also got opportunity to contribute to a few open source projects like Ceph and Kong, right? So that's about me. Now, talking about Kong at CRED, right? So I think it's a very integral part of our tech ecosystem, and we use it for a variety of purposes. For example, we use it for authentication of different types on user side, partner side, merchant side, etc., right? We use it for rate limiting, as Jess mentioned about. So that's one of the use cases of rate limiting. We also do API rate limiting and stuff, right? We also use it for quality of service. So quality of service is basically when you want to proactively do some progressive load shedding on your services, right? And this is something which we will also be talking about in the Kong Summit this month, which is happening in SF. So if you folks are around, please join the talk. And in terms of scale, on a BAU, we get around 700,000 requests per minute on our Kong cluster. So that's the kind of scale that we are dealing with, right? Now before I go into the topic, right, let me just briefly talk about my journey with Kong, right, and what basically brought the need of what I'm going to talk about today, right? So I've been working with Kong for around 3 years now, and we were actually looking for a robust API gateway in my previous organization. And we had standard requirements around authentication, authorization, rate limiting, etc. Right? And obviously, Kong stood out as the winner because it has a good open source community. It's robust, sitting on the shoulders of Nginx, right? It's scalable. It is fast. So the proxy latencies in Kong are sub-millisecond, right? And it is also extensible, where you can write custom plugins in Kong with a framework called PDK, which is Kong's plugin development kit, right? And in fact, now talking about custom plugins, right? So custom plugins is, in my opinion, a very strong capability of Kong, because it allows you to extend your use cases or deal with the complexities of your business in the way you want, right? Rather than being limited by whatever is provided, right? And in fact, a lot of organizations that I know write a lot of custom plugins when they use Kong, right? And some of the features that I like about plugins are that it has a data store support, so you can actually go and persist whatever entities that you want in the database itself without having to sort of do any custom integration, right? So Kong provides support for data stores like Postgres and Cassandra, so you can readily use that. It also allows local caching of the entities, right? So you don't have, so when your request comes to the Kong node, it need not go to the database every time. So it can locally cache whatever data that you need and serve it from there, right? So that's why it is also fast. And these things come out of the box, right? So you don't have to put any effort in building all these capabilities, right? Apart from this, a lot of open source and free plugins are already available. So if you see that, okay, there is a use case of yours and which is not being solved, or the plugin is not available in the community version or the enterprise version, somebody would have already developed and somewhere, and it will be on GitHub, right? Now when we talk about custom plugins, right? So one of the next question was, how do you actually write custom plugins, right? So that was the next question which we had. And that's when we came across this tool which is called Kong Pongo, right? So, and Kong Pongo actually allows you to so just give me 2 minutes, I'll get it back. Custom plugins in Kong, right? Okay, and that's when we came across this tool, which is called Kong Pongo. It is done by it is built by the Kong's community itself. So what it does is it actually allows you to write custom plugins, and it allows you to test those custom plugins, right? So this tool was already there, right? Wherein like you can go to GitHub and check its documentation. This will help you, right? But there were a few limitations, right? And let me talk about what were the limitations with this tool. So the first limitation was how do you develop and test multiple plugins? So this tool allows you to write one plugin and test one plugin. But if you have multiple plugins in your ecosystem, how do you go and test them? One example of that could be, for example, you have an authentication plugin and you have an authorization plugin, right? The authentication plugin resolves the consumer, and then your authorization plugins attaches roles or whatever to the authorization plugin, right? So if you need to test this functionality end to end, you need to have both authentication plugin as well as authorization plugin enabled and have some sort of tooling which allows you to do that, right? So which was not possible with Kong Pongo. Similarly, when I talk about multiple plugins, it is possible that some of the plugins I can internally develop in-house, or I can use some of the existing open source plugins, fork them, develop them, whatever, right? So that was another requirement. The third requirement is again is about writing integration test across these multiple plugins, right? Now there is another aspect when you are developing Kong plugins, right? So as I mentioned, Kong has support for database, right? So which means if your plugin is using a database, you have to do some migrations. Those migrations would basically be around what sort of schemas or schema changes that you want in your database, right? And there are certain commands that you have to run before enabling a Kong plugin. So you have to run Kong Bootstrap up and Kong Bootstrap migration, etc., right? But if you are locally developing something, doing it again and again repetitively, following the same commands, sort of becomes repetitive, right? So that was another sort of problem which we wanted to solve. The other thing is, sure, so now I have some capability to test and develop Kong plugins, but the configuration of the Kong plugins for my local testing should also be easy, right? Because what Kong exposes is just REST APIs, right? And you have to sort of go and configure a service, you have to go configure a route, you have to enable the plugin, you have to do all that stuff, right? So there is another open source project called Konga, which is a dashboard for Kong, right? So that's what we sort of leverage. I'll talk about that later, right? So so that was another requirement. Now the third thing is, okay, I've done my development, but I want my the image with which I've done the development, right? I want the same image to be deployed to production itself, because that's the image which is sort of qualified and tested, right? So that capability was also required. And related requirement is that you should have some easy way to sort of integrate all of this into a CI pipeline, wherein you can run all your tests, etc., etc., right? And then at a high level, how do you define this project structure in Kong, right? So if you go to Java or Golang or whatever, there are certain best practices or conventions around how should you structure your code, etc., right? But how do you structure a Kong repo which has multiple plugins, right? So what is the best practice there, right? So I think these were some of the questions which we had, and that's when this project called Kong Island it sort of emerged, and it is nothing but it's a template and it's a set of utilities which ease local development of Kong plugins and helps with all the things that I just mentioned about, right? And this tool uses some of these things, right, which is Kong Pongo, Docker Compose, Konga for the dashboard, and Makefile for easy targets where you can define a lot of your commands, right? So that's what Kong Island does. So it's available on GitHub. If you want, you can go and check it out. So so what I'll do is I'll just quickly move to a demo, and I'll be actually playing a recorded video for this. But before that, just give me 1 minute. Hello? Hello? Okay, so I'll be, sorry for this, I'll be actually presenting from here because I need to do something on my laptop and it's really not feasible to do it in the sun there. Sorry for this. So let me just show you what the demo is going to be about, right? So if you see, this is the Kong Island repo that I was talking about, right? And what it has certain directories, as you can see, right? So what I'll do is I'll just maybe quickly walk through what the demo is going to be. So if you see, there is a directory called Kong plugins. So this is the directory where you keep all your Kong plugins, right? So these could be public Kong plugins, or these could be the plugins which you develop locally, right? And so if you see, I have a default Kong plugin here, which is again by the Kong community itself. So it's a very simple plugin. What it does is it actually attaches certain request and response header. That's it, right? So it's for a demo purpose. And then there is another plugin which I will be adding as part of the demo. So what I'll do is I'll add another plugin which is Kong plugin uppercase response. What it does is it just changes the response from the upstream to all uppercases, right? So that's the thing which it does. So if you see, this right now is not available here. So I'll be adding this and I'll be showing you how do you develop and test these multiple plugins using this toolkit, right? So that is what the demo is going to be about. So let me just go and play the video. Okay, are you able to see the screen? Are you able to see the cursor there? Okay, so wait, let me play. Okay, is it visible now? Huh? Okay, sorry, I'll start it from again. So yeah, so if you see, let it come. Okay, wait, just give me 1 minute. Yeah. So yeah. So the first thing that I do is I actually go and clone this repository, right, into my local directory. I hope the screen is visible. Okay. I go to the project, right, and if you see, I did a recursive clone so that all my submodules are also available. Right now, let's look at what do we have here, right? So this is my Kong Island project, and let me just run a command which is make help. So it shows all the different commands or commands which are available. So the first command is init, right? So what it does is it actually symlinks Pongo to your pin path, right? So that you can use the Pongo command easily, right? So that's what this command does. Then I'll go and so there is another command which is called test each. So what it will go is it will recursively go and test each of the Kong plugins which were available, right? And so within a Kong plugin you can actually write test as well. So these tests which this particular command is testing, so these tests are actually available within those plugins themselves, right? So these are actually local tests or basically individual tests for those plugins. So if you see the command, what it is doing is it is actually using Pongo behind the scenes. It is actually bringing up the dependent container. So it is bringing up Postgres. It is bringing up Cassandra because all your plugin test runs against all the available data stores. So when you run your test, it will test it against Cassandra. It will test it against Postgres, etc. Right? So this is what is happening. The test is running. You can see this my plugin, and you can see what is the strategy. The strategy is Postgres, which is being tested right now, right? And similarly, this will proceed, and you will see that the individual test of these plugins will get executed. So the Cassandra test just got executed now. You can see there, right? So all the tests passed for this particular plugin. Okay. So the next command that we have is up. So I understand that, okay, now the tests are running fine, but I also want to do a local dev testing, right? I need to experience how it will work if I hit it from my local, right? So there is a command called make up. What it does is it actually brings up the containers, and you can then directly go to your browser and just hit the Konga dashboard, right? So what I'll be doing here is I'll be hitting the Konga dashboard, localhost 1337. But you see it is not available right now, right? And that is because your migrations have not yet run. So the container is waiting and restarting for the migrations to run. So if you see, I'm just trying to tail the logs of the Kong container, and if you can see here, it is saying that, okay, the Kong migrations up needs to be run, right? So it is just waiting for that command to get executed. Once that command gets executed, it will basically go and your dashboard, Konga dashboard should be up. So yeah, you come here, now you see your Konga dashboard is here, and it is already logged in for me because I have also defined what is the username password to use with Konga predefined in the Kong Island repo. So I don't have to generate it and do it again and again, right? But I'm still logging it out and doing it again, right? So if you see, my connections are also available. I can just go and activate this connection. So this connection is actually of my local Kong which is running. Now what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to create a service here. And in this service, the upstream endpoint is I've just taken a webhook.site URL, which I'm just trying to configure. And now what I'll do is I'll just go and configure a route as well. So in Kong, you have concept of routes as well as upstreams or services. So this is a /test route, which I'm going to test it against. I go to my Kong Island, my terminal, and I'll just so I'm checking the logs here, and you can see that Kong container is actually getting the responses now. Now I'll try to just do a curl on that endpoint, which was configured on Kong, and you can see webhook.site received that particular response. So which means my Kong setup is working fine, right? Now I can go and configure a plugin, the my plugin which I had actually tested, right? So I can go and configure it. It actually sends the request header and the response header. And you can see that I get a response header which is by world, which was set by that particular plugin. So plugin is working fine. So far, so good. You have different other commands as well. For example, I can do lint check on my plugins, whether linting is working fine or not. Now what I'll do is, now I will be adding the uppercase plugin which I talked about, right? So this was not actually present in my repo. So what I have done is I've just added that as a submodule within the Kong plugins directory. So that plugin is added. And I can similarly run make test each again. So what it will do is it will again test for all the plugins, including the new plugin which is right now available. Right, so I'll just skip this a little bit. Okay. Okay, so that is done. Now I'll show you how do you write an integration test, right? An integration test is testing multiple plugins within the same function. So what I've done here is I've just copied the unit test from the existing uppercase plugin, and I'll just move it to a test directory within the Kong island, right? So that's where you keep all your integration test. And what I'm doing here is within that test case, I'm just adding my plugin as well, because I want to test both the plugins now. So there are certain configurations that you need to do in the unit test framework, wherein you need to define what all plugins you need to add those plugins to your services or routes that you are testing, right? And then you start Kong with the plugin section saying use uppercase response as well as the my plugin which was already present. Right. So what I'll try to do here is now I'll just copy one of the test scenarios from the existing plugin and put it in this function itself, so that it tests those things, right? So if you remember, my plugin actually sets request and response headers. So this is the assertion which is happening in the test case. So what I'll do is I'll add this assertion within the uppercase plugin, so that now I can check for lowercase to uppercase as well as for the header being present in the response which I get, right? Okay. Then if you see, there is another target which is called test integration. What it does is it actually tests all the integration tests which are defined as part of the plugin. So that's what it does. So this will go and run all the integration tests, and you can see that all the tests have now passed, right? So integration testing also works. Similarly, what I can do is I can do a make up again and bring the local Kong container up again along with both the plugins. So earlier in the local setup we only had one plugin, so I can actually go and bring both the plugins now, right? So you just have to add that plugin in the Kong configuration, and it should be available in the sections, and you can just go and add the uppercase plugin as well, right? And so once you do this, you hit your APIs again, and you will be able to see that you are getting both the response as well as small, which is capitalized. So which means both the plugins are working now, right? So yeah. So I think that's it. Then there are some helper commands around testing, cleaning up the test setup, etc., etc. Right? So that's pretty much about it. So I know it probably would have been a little overwhelming. but at least it would give you some idea. I think what you can then do is maybe go to the GitHub repository, try it out. If you have any suggestions, any contributions, please feel free to make them, right? Yeah, I think that's it from my side. Any questions? Yeah.
So this, whatever the plugins you write in Go and Makefile or any language, because the plugins are different, right? How you do make compatible, because all REST only or
Yeah. So the Kong Island setup or utility has nothing to do with in what language your plugins are written, right? So uh, right now what support that I've provided is for plugins which are written in Lua, right? But let's say, and right now Kong supports Lua as well as Go plugins. So Go plugin support is also pretty new. I'm not sure how many folks are using it in the production, but you can always extend this to, let's say, if you want Go-based support, right? So it'll be just adding a few configurations in the Kong.conf itself, and this setup should work for that.
so can you show the list of plugin already available as a, like, only default plugin you show, right?
So,
Already, see,
yeah.
in the hackathon they have lot of plugins, I know they showed.
Yeah.
But
So this is a template repository. I've just added that plugin as a reference, right? You can go and add whatever plugins you want, or you can go and remove this as well, right? So there is no compulsion. It is just a template repository from that point of view.
Is there a way to test it across multiple versions of Kong together?
Okay, good. So this tool definitely has support for Kong versions. So what you can do is you can actually go and change the Kong version against which you want to test. So it's a small configuration which is available in the README, right? But when you say test against multiple Kong versions, I am not sure whether like that will even work, because when you are installing a set of plugins, you will only install on one instance of Kong, right? So if you have two instances of Kong running, you will probably need to do this thing for different versions of Kong which are running, right? And which anyways makes sense, because the deployment, CI/CD, testing, etc. would be different for these two versions of Kong that you're running on your ecosystem, right?
So if there are any plugins which are requiring a database, does this tool also test the migration support for those plugins?
Yes. So what this tool does is it provides you an easy way to execute the migrations. The migration support is there in Kong itself. But what you need to do is you need to run the commands manually. You need to do Kong bootstrap, Kong bootstrap migration, etc., right? What this tool does is it actually, if you look at the Docker Compose file, it first spawns the bootstrap command container, then spawns the up command container, then spawns the Kong container. So it basically does those things for you.
so that Nginx having a Lua plugin and Kong having a Lua plugin, what difference have you seen some difference? Because see, the Nginx also people write Lua plugin and then they automate as API gateway. And Kong on the top of wrapper of Nginx, then having a Lua plugin there.
Yeah.
So what?
Got it. So see, as far as I understand, right, Kong is nothing but it's a framework on top of OpenResty, and OpenResty is nothing but it's a Nginx extension with a module which allows you to write and hook to different stages of execution of a Kong plugin, right? Now I am not very sure whether Nginx allows you to write plugins of this sort. I think you can do some computation locally, but it does not give you this level of control in terms of hooking into different phases. So for example, you may want to hook in the access phase, which is when you are receiving the request, or you may want to hook in the header filter phase when you are filtering the headers, or you may want to hook in the response phase when you are getting the response and transform it to the user, right? So Kong gives you that functionality in a much easy and usable way.
Okay.
So my question was like, let's say, like, is there like a limit to the number of plugins we can use, and does it affect the performance? Because let's say, if like we have multiple plugins enabled at a time, and it's obvious that we will have to make multiple number of database calls. So won't it affect the performance?
Yeah, so good question. So this actually depends on the performance characteristics of each and every individual plugin, right? For example, and definitely if you are putting thousands of plugins and even if they are not touching the database, it will still impact your execution, right? So that is true. But when you talk about, let's say we have a couple of plugins and you are not sure whether this will impact my performance or not, right? So one thumb rule is that don't put database access in the request path. Even if you are putting, please make sure that you are caching those entities within the Kong container, right? So that will make sure that it's not choking up your Kong cluster. The second thing is do load testing, figure it out.
Are these test cases running in parallel for each plugin? Because like we want to put it in CI pipeline and we want that CI pipeline is fast. So are these running in parallel?
Right now they are not in parallel, but I think that should be a easy configuration. It is just about executing those in background, maybe from the makefile, right? So makefile can just trigger them in parallel and execute them. So I don't think that should be a big change, but that's a good suggestion. Please do contribute.
And generally are these test cases heavy or like just doing some regex match or string match? Like is there a use case where it will take a lot of time for a test case to run?
Ideally it should not be, because the kind of things that you can do in Kong is very limited. Like you can't write your business logic in Kong, right? So you will probably do some request parsing, maybe response parsing, although even that is not suggested. Maybe you'll work with headers and stuff, right? So that should not take a lot of time in my opinion.
Cool. Thanks.
Can this be integrated with GitHub Actions so that all these steps can be automated?
Yes, it can be. And let me show you how. In fact, I've done it. So what I've done is a Travis.ci integration, but you can do GitHub integration as well, GitHub Action. So your now CI is just about executing these commands. Does that answer?
Yeah. Also, like you mentioned, data storage, Postgres or Cassandra. Also, does it support in-memory databases like Redis or Memcached?
Yes. So the beauty of Kong is that you can always extend it, right? So if you don't want to use a database, it is absolutely fine. You can locally cache your entities. But if you want to use a centralized cache, people have done Redis integration. So I think there is a Redis Lua library which is available, which you can use and do whatever you want. Like you can do integration with like anything which has a Lua integration, or you can like that Lua integration as well if you want.
Thank you.
Any more questions?
Does this also help with the CI part of the pipeline, building all of the, packaging all of the plugins together into an image which we can deploy?
Yes, that's a good question. So if you look at the Docker file in this repository, right? So what it does is it actually copies all your plugins and do a Lua mix install. So which means it is bundled. So this image is what you are testing against, and this image is what you will deploy. Any more questions? Okay, I think we are good. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, Abhishek, for that interactive session.